Today is 12th of January. Ukraine Media Center Ukrinform starts its operation. My name is Vasil Samakvalov, and today we will be talking about how the journalists, first of all, the foreign media, see their work in Ukraine, see their cooperation with the government agencies in Ukraine, see their cooperation with Ukraine in general. Right by my side are two people who can tell about the results of this study is Alexander Tkachenko, the Minister for Culture and Information Policy, and Igor Solovets, Center for Strategic Communication and Information Security. Right away, I'm gonna tell you they conducted a very fundamental research. They questioned a lot of producers, journalists, and even our media center was involved in this work. Our media base was used in this study. We were inviting people, we were inviting journalists for questioning, so it would be interesting for us to see what are the results of the study. Right away, I will tell you we have a lot of interesting listeners. In our studio, Artem Dekhtarenko from Security Service in Ukraine, Alexander Matizyanik from Ministry of Defense, and Pavlo Kovalchuk from General Staff, and more interesting people. Maybe I haven't called all of them, but our work will be built in the following way. Half an hour we will be seeing the results of the research. If you have any questions, you will be able to ask your questions, and then off record, we will be able to ask all the questions you wanted to ask for a long time ago, but didn't have this opportunity. Then joining us online will be Evgenia Polchikova, the representative of KMIS. But let's start right away, and I'm passing the mic to Mr. Alexander Tkachenko. First of all, I want to thank all the representatives of all the foreign mass media who cover the events going on in Ukraine, the war over the Russian aggression against Ukraine, so that everybody knows the truth about what's going on in Ukraine. So their results will be a guide of this study, will be a guidance for us, so we may work over the results of this research and to make the work of the foreign journalists in Ukraine, I wouldn't say more pleasant, but more comfortable in terms of organization and general arrangements. So in brief, let's see. Well, I'll just have a couple of words. First of all, I want to thank everybody who came here today, the representatives of the mass media, and everybody who is involved in the work with international and foreign journalists. I am not going to tell about the actuality of this issue right now, because our audience is very professional and they know not from words but from deeds how important this work is for ensuring the information security of the state. I would like to stop at our purpose, at our goal when we started this question. And first of all, we wanted to see the current condition of the events of this for the history. We were trying to gather. Secondly, we were trying to demonstrate the foreign journalists that the state, the government, is not deaf in terms of problems of the foreign media in Ukraine, and tries to react to solve the problematic issues which arise. And we wanted to gather just in one spot all such problematic issues, just to create a depot for representatives of the government agencies who are involved in work with foreign media, mass media. And the fourth goal was to accumulate that experience that we collected during this 1 year of work and to hand it over at request of our foreign partners. First of all, I want to say that this study is not final, because the war is not over yet, and judging by the statements of our military and political management, the situation is going to develop, it's going to evolve. This is why this study will be continuing in year 2023, I'm sorry, and I'm inviting you to see it as the invitation to cooperation, and I would like to ask the colleagues who were directly involved in this question. Yes, may I ask to get Ms. Evgenia connected? Please bring her on screen. Good morning, Ms. Evgenia. Good morning. Can you hear me? Yes, we're hearing you clear and loud. Can you tell us about the methodology, what you were questioning people about, and why should we trust your study? I'm representing the Kiev International Institute of Sociology. We were taking part in this study directly among the representatives of the foreign media, and the question was going on in September, December 2022, and the main method was the method of deep personal interviews. And the potential participants were sent out the invitations. All the interviews were taking place online. And we were using a number of criteria for potential respondents. The respondents should be the correspondents or the journalists of foreign mass media who at least once were visiting Ukraine after the beginning of the full-scale invasion, after the 24th of February 2022. And the professionals were required to publish at least one material related to the war in Ukraine. And since one of the most important tasks of this research was to evaluate the experience of communication of the foreign mass media with the government agencies of Ukraine, the criteria of selection was an application to or contact with one of such agencies like Office of President or Security Service of Ukraine, etc. Also, during our selection, we were trying to the maximum extent adhere to the variability of the types of media. Those were radio stations, internet media, blogs, and newspapers. We were also trying to adhere to the variability of the size and the location of the media in terms of countries. Unfortunately, since we had no opportunity to get interpreters additionally to the questioning, it had certain imprint because only those media professionals were questions who have certain relevant level of English level, while questioning was taking place only in English. So we questioned 55 respondents. It's 50 foreign reporters, correspondents, and journalists who represent 28 countries across the world. And we asked 5 Ukrainian fixers who had experience of work with foreign journalists in Ukraine, and among those who were taking part in the questioning were the mostly representatives of G7 and neighboring countries, such as Poland, for example. And the rest of the countries were represented in equal proportions, approximately. Also, among the participants of the research, 3/4 were men and 1/4 was women. Average age was 41 year. And the majority of the question ones, or the average number of visits was twice since the beginning of the full-scale invasion, and the longest duration of stay, the average duration of stay was 53 days. Also, I think it's worth mentioning that since this research was quality, it's not representative for all the mass media representatives who worked in Ukraine, but it only expresses the opinions of those who were taking part in the question. Thank you, Ms. Evgenia. Thank you. I have a question to Mr. Igor. Since you were responsible for the question, what do we do right? What do we do wrong? What is there still to improve? Us? Well, first of all, I would like to say about my personal impressions, my emotions. On the general critical background of work with foreign mass media, which was in the air during the last 2 weeks, maybe 1 month, the results of this study showed quite a positive attitude of foreign journalists to the work of our government agencies, which is of great joy to me. There was also a high level of evaluation of work of Ukrainian fixers. Everybody noted the resourcefulness, broad contact base, and good level of English level, and their readiness to help in the most difficult situations. Among the most valuable things in this study are the 2 last pages. They are the recommendations, which reflect not only the experience or personal knowledge of the employees of the center, but it's 90% the proposals of the foreign journalists themselves. I want to emphasize this moment specifically. They're not taken from just out of the blue, but these proposals are based on recommendations of the people working in the field. And if we look at those recommendations, I would segregate 2 blocks of problematic issues that arise. First block is the issues of accreditation, and the second block is the work in the field directly. I don't want to spend your time to get deep into these details. I think during our conversation we will say a couple more words about that, but I would like to draw your attention to somewhat new messages that emerged during our conversations. That those messages, they were in the air, but they were not formalized before in no way. First of all, is the proposal for creation of the joint window for work with foreign journalists. Can you decipher it? Well, what are you talking about? Well, I'm talking about the fact that the people who are our colleagues who are currently present here or who are not present here but who are in Ukraine, they stumble upon the situation when they have to contact a large number, or I would say sufficient or substantial number of representatives of government institutions who are responsible for their areas of work, and the colleagues, they ask to canalize it into some agency or interagency structure which would accumulate all those fields of work. Well, Media Center is right here for you. Well, I think that Media Center and the Ministry of Culture and Information Policy may get involved as well. I'm not answering for the minister, but I would like to hear his opinion in this regard. And another question which arose is the involvement in the accreditation process of involvement of Ministry of Foreign Affairs in the accreditation process. Before the year 2004, Ministry of Foreign Affairs was responsible for this type of activities, so for them this work would not be new. Unfortunately, I don't see representatives of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs here in the studio. We invited them. I just texted to the minister. Well, you see, the minister is working. So this is where I'm stopping. So this these were the two problems I would like to emphasize, and I would like to invite the colleagues from foreign mass media to get involved in our further questionings, in our further studies like this, to be more active in this regards, to represent those problematic issues which were not brought up and to accumulate them in one document. We hope that this document would become the cheat sheet for proper use in work for those who work in this area, in this field. All right, let's take maybe two questions from this studio. Or Mr. Taras is right here, the Deputy Minister. Please take your seat. And then we will proceed to off-record communication with the cameras of we're having questions in the studio. Good afternoon, Yulia Gadina, Ukrinform. I'm having one question regarding the study and another about the details. So the details, this research says that 55 persons were questions, 50 journalists and 5 fixers. So other is the question to Ministry of Information, of Culture and Information Policy. What's the general number of foreign journalists working in Ukraine now, and what number of media do they represent? Do we have such information, Ms. Serena? Well, this question should be forwarded to the armed forces of Ukraine. According to the details I had as of a few months ago, it was around 12,000 representatives of foreign mass media. I understand there are certain rotations, someone is coming, someone is leaving, but generally we had 12,000 accreditations. 3,500 passed only through media center. It was not accreditation, but it was just registration. So yeah, the figure is approximating 12,000. Thank you very much. And another question is based on the results. 51% said that there is a substantial difficulty with receiving information from government agencies. Can you say what were the exact difficulties? Can you give us the details about such difficulties? So is the availability of contact information, the actual contact information, because it happens so frequently that in the websites or in the guides that there are contacts like municipal phone number, and another is the absence of feedback. So those are the two main problematic issues. Do we have any more questions in the studio? Do you have a question? Is this going to improve? Can you please introduce yourself? Pavlo Yurov, I work with friends too. All those moments brought up in the in this study, what will be the process of implementation of those recommendations? We gathered mostly with Ukrainian journalists because their questions are a little bit different, but generally are the same. Say for accreditation, they have questions about accreditation in the areas of warfare, and we did research a couple of times with the defense forces to get some mutual understanding, to improve this mutual understanding. There were positive changes, but since there are many agencies involved in this warfare process, involved in coordination of the work of the journalists, such coordination, fixing is something that's happening on a periodic basis. Yes, we have to reiterate it, and I think that as a result of this study we will have another meeting of those who are involved in this process, so that based on this specific study we can draw up some conclusions and to make the work of foreign journalists more comfortable and to facilitate it. Taras Shevchenko, Deputy Minister of Culture and Information Policy, who just joined us. I want to add that except for the access to information that foreign journalists had difficulties with, we also had difficulties with cooperation with the government agencies in terms of administrative issues, permits, bulletin, entrance and leaving, the registration of offices. I see familiar faces. We were meeting in this studio maybe in summer. We were fixing those problems. and the representatives of our ministry were working on solution of those issues to bring back the car which passed, or some registration of representative office. All those issues that were gathered in this studio, we were directly involved in solving such problems, and I hope that this is the component for the improvement of the work of the representatives of the mass media with the ministry and the other government agencies. I want to introduce Irina Pobedonosova, the office of the president. Introduce yourself. Tatiana Popova is Islandia channel, and I work a lot with international mass media. Is there anything to be done to reduce the time for accreditation from 2 months when I was creating this accreditation back in 2014 in Ministry of Defense? We were hoping it would take 2 to 3 days, and now all the foreign journalists say that they're waiting 2 months for accreditation. Well, I think it would be right to address this issue with those who take part, who are involved in accreditation. So these people are in the studio. Are we off record now? So who's here from General Staff and Ministry of Defense? Ministry of Defense says it's it's the responsibility of the security service. Yeah, but the fact that there is a security screening after the application by the Ministry of Defense, it makes the accreditation more difficult within 2 days. We were already meeting with Bogdan Senik and his colleague, and they say that the delay is on part of security service. So I think that the security service will tell us a couple of words off record. I have a question on my part. I'm seeing fixers here. So how can we move to institutionalize these fixers? Because now we're just defining what fixers are. Are they journalists, drivers, with accreditation? Are they interpreters? What kind of profession is that? It was there is need for them, but it's not properly described in our legislation, because the fixers are the hands and eyes of the foreign journalists here. So how this question of aid, of support, of accreditation, how can we meet the requirements, the demands of these very necessary people? Is the Ukrainian legislation is very liberal. The people who can be the representatives of a journalist organization, they can receive accreditation, and we were hearing it from foreign media in a different way, who accredit the drivers on their behalf. They make the drivers journalists under some short-term contract, and they would not like to distribute their business cards. Yeah, it's related to the fact that they need accreditation. There are no obstacles for accreditation. In fact, so maybe it's the question to the studio, how big is this problem? And if you have proposals as to the solutions, we were discussing it, different formats, some short accreditation, facilitated accreditation, but I understand that to implement different formats of accreditation with this number of people would be just an additional complication. We understand the administration of this process is quite difficult. More questions? Good morning, Kirienko Kanda. I'm fixer. I worked with French channels mostly. Regarding the accreditation, I'm interested. If I worked with one channel, they accredited me, that they left, they're back to France. Now I'll be working with another TV channel, and they write me, can you work with us? But my accreditation expired. So I work with a lot of mass media, but every time I have to ask them to submit me as a member of their team, and it takes 3 months. I understand that issuing the accreditation for fixers is something maybe excessive, but we can only work as the citizens of Ukraine, interpreters, well, whoever. It's an interesting question in general. Well, it was the question, actually. Well, I think it was not a question, but rather a statement. It was a confirmation of the words said before. It was just the continuation of our discussion. Well, I am seeing that the people want mostly talk of records, so I'm asking the directors to switch off the camera. We have the representatives of Security Service, General Staff and Ministry of Defense, and our profile ministry here, so I may ask our colleagues to come and ask questions of the records. Yes, we stop the translation, we stop airing now. Well, I would like to get